and good morning. And what an honor it is to stand with all of you. What an honor it is to stand with people who get up every day, who work hard, who make sacrifice, who risk their lives so that the people of this nation can have the food resource they're entitled to. Yes, entitled to. They can't come from Indiana or Iowa to the coast. They depend on you. People from the entire country depend on us for this protein resource. And we stand here today as one group of people, regardless of party, regardless of whether we're from the federal government, the state government, the local government, and we have one message. Not on our watch are we going to let fishermen, not on our watch are we going to let fishermen be the first species on Earth to go extinct because of regulation. We are going to stand up and realize that we are indeed in the 11th hour. Hundreds of years of fishing tradition. The first industry in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is at risk. And it's at risk not because we don't know how to fish sustainably, not because we don't want to be good stewards of the ocean, because we depend on the ocean, and not because we don't know how to craft rules that can govern a sustainable fishery. We are about to go extinct because of a bureaucracy that won't open the door, let the sun shine in, and have a conversation about how to get to tomorrow. And if we don't do that, we aren't going to get to tomorrow. We talk a lot about the future of this industry, and we dream of a different day. A day not when we catch the last fish in the ocean, because that's not what we're about. A day when we catch the first fish of a new era in fishing. When we wake up to a different day. When we have responsible conversations with each other about how to be good stewards of the resource. Where we talk about the next generation of this fishing fleet. When we talk about the next generation of fishermen. And yes, when we talk about science that is credible and that we can believe in and isn't off at times by hundreds of percentage points while decisions are made that put people out of business. There's a lot of bad news out there right now because we are in that 11th hour. But there's a lot of good news too. There's a lot of good news because in this democracy, we have the ultimate power if we choose to use it. And now is the time. Now is the time for those of us on this stage and beyond to prove to you that the power of democracy can be stronger than the power of bureaucracy. Now is the time for us to prove to you that the power of integrity in science is better than speculative science that no one trusts and that we shouldn't depend on. Now is the time to talk to the world about the fact that we have every step of the way respected the rules, respected the federal government. You know what? Now is the time for the federal government to respect us. You remember when the Magnuson Act came into play? Why did it come into play? Because the resource was being destroyed from foreign factory vessels. And these United States stood up and said, we're going to protect that resource. Read the Magnuson Act. It doesn't say that we protect fish to promote an aquarium in the Atlantic Ocean. The Magnuson Act says this. It says we protect fish because of the potential to feed the country. We protect fish because of the need to have a dynamic, vibrant fishing industry that puts people to work, provides a protein resource, and carries on a tradition that started when this coast was settled. So the Magnuson Act is very clear. Nobody in Congress could have meant that it was meant to put the fishing industry out of business, and it isn't. The Magnuson Act is meant to promote the development of sustainable fisheries. And that's what we're asking for. With an interim rule that is clearly authorized by the Magnuson Act, not status quo, Not the same interim rule that we've had, but one that promotes the end of overfishing. Not in 1 year. Didn't occur in 1 year. The idea is to have sustainable rebuilding, to begin to reduce yet again overfishing, and to dream of that day when we have better science, when we have enforcement that is more respectful, and thank God for the people on this stage that have helped us to get to that point thus far. But we dream of that day. But if nothing changes, that day will never come. So we are here on a sacred mission, all together, all united, asking for that which the law allows. And by the way, if the flexibility isn't there, change the law. That's what revising Magnuson is all about. So let's stand together and say to folks like the regional administrator, the folks that are here from the Division of Marine Fisheries, and I want to say thanks to Mary Griffin and her team for being here as well. Let's say to them this one thing. Mr. President, we are on a sacred mission. We want to protect the livelihood that has sustained Massachusetts since it started. And if there are companies in this country that are too big to fail, then for heaven's sake, why isn't the fishing industry too important to fail? So let's hold our head up. Let's say to President Obama, you can make this change. You can make this difference. We stand together. We know how to do it. Let's roll up our sleeves. There's little time left, but a forever to protect. That's right. God bless you all, and thank you for coming out today, and let's continue to fight the fight. Woo!
Thank you, Senator Tarr. Next is Massachusetts State Representative Ann Margaret Ferrante.
Thank you, Jackie. You know, it's so interesting being out on the wharf this morning because it reminds me of my childhood. Many of you know because I recognize so many of you, not because I represent you as a state representative, but because my father used to fish on these boats. I look at men like Enzo Russo, men that my father fished with. And I'm so glad that the regional administrator is here. Because on a day like today, I don't know whether I should be up on this stage or if I should be in the crowd. And as my heart pounds being up here, and as my heart pounds because I can smell the salt water, and as my heart pounds because I see these beautiful big boats and all of you before me, things go through my mind, statements go through my mind. Like today is a day of reckoning. Why? Did my father who fished on one of those boats that risked his life so that his daughter could go to college, so that his daughter could go to law school, so that his daughter could make something of herself and more importantly, bring her community along with her, did he do something wrong? Because I look out, I look across the horizon, and if you look across the horizon, you see the hotels, and then you see this golden square that stands up above the horizon. And I can tell you from having stand here before, I can tell you what that is. It's a statue of Our Lady. It's a 30-foot statue of Our Lady that my mother, my grandmother, and I would go pray to make sure after 10 days at sea, 10 days at sea doing nothing more than what Senator Tarr just said, 10 days at sea to capture a resource so that everybody in our community had food on their table. Can you imagine that? Risking your life, and I know all of you in this audience do, risking your life for 10 days to do something as noble as bringing food home on your table, and then somebody from government has to say, well, you know, a day of reckoning is coming. For what? For what? I'm so glad Congressman Tierney and the Attorney General are here. I'm so glad to have them here because they were partners. They were partners in a law enforcement scandal, one where the government came down on you. And we tried so hard to hold everybody accountable, but nobody was, were they? There was no day of reckoning. There's no day of reckoning. Nobody looked at Dale Jones and said, there's a day of reckoning. No! What they said to Dale Jones is, we're going to give you a better job. That's your day of reckoning. But when we stand out here and we say we need relief, we want to continue our way of life. We want to continue bringing food to families all throughout this nation. What does the government come back with? Well, even if the law said that we could go with an interim rule, we wouldn't. Why? Why? Because if the law says you can do it, that's a legal action, right? That would be within the bounds. Saving fishermen, saving the families, saving the communities would be within the bounds of laws, but that's not good enough. It's not good enough, is it? No. No, it's not good enough until a government agency comes down, demoralizes fishing families, takes away their livelihood, unjustly uses enforcement against them, and says that you now face a day of reckoning, and I want to know why. As I stand here, I look again at Enzo Russo. Every Saturday, 4 o'clock Mass, I see Enzo Russo in a pew next to me. Doesn't sound like a bad guy, does it? I look out, I see Joe Padre Pio with his son Mario. Joe's worked his whole life, hand-scarred, to give his son a business. Doesn't sound like a bad guy to me. And yet we're here facing a day of reckoning. Why? Massachusetts led the fight. Massachusetts